4. Every so often, the noise of gunfire could be heard in the village now. Pascal didn't know what it was initially. The distant rat-tat-tat sounded as if it might be loggers or a carpenter or a stonemason at work. But when it happened in the middle of the night, Pascal began to ask questions. Mrs. Camara shrugged her shoulders when, in the absence of his father, he asked her for the first time. "There are all sorts of strange noises in the night," she said. "I don't know which ones you mean." "It's not just in the night," said Pascal. "Sometimes you can hear them in the daytime, too." His mother shrugged once more. "I'm sure it's nothing to worry about." She smiled and carried on with her washing, humming quietly. Pascal was sure she was hiding something, and asked his cousins what they thought the noise was. They laughed loudly at him. "That's gunfire you're hearing, dolt," Camille sniggered. He placed a pretend gun at Pascal's head. "Bang, bang, you're dead." Pascal pushed his hand away. He thought Camille meant that someone was practicing shooting, until Oliver added, "There are rebel soldiers all around us, waiting to grab us when we're asleep." The cousins laughed again. Pascal tried to laugh with them, even though he couldn't see the joke. "Poor Pascal, he won't sleep a wink ever again," Camille snorted. "Yes, I will, because I don't believe you," Pascal retorted lamely. "Believe what you like," said Oliver. Pascal wanted to believe that it was all just stupid talk, but when he spoke to Angeline, she failed to douse his suspicion that something bad was happening. "Why can't you tell me what's going on?" he asked. "I'm not a baby." "It's nothing to be concerned about," she replied. "It's a few rogue soldiers from across the border firing a few shots to make themselves feel big." "But how far away are they?" Pascal wanted to know. "Far enough," said Angeline, "and our soldiers will soon send them packing." Try as they might to prevent him from worrying, his family couldn't stop him from listening to the gossip at school. Some of the children had heard that rebels had taken control of a number of nearby towns, and that there was fierce fighting. Others said that the refugees from Sierra Leone and Liberia were causing trouble because they wanted to go home. Pascal wished his father would come home and stay home. He was scared that he might be caught up in the fighting while he was away, and that they might never see him again. Besides, he wanted his father to be there to protect him. "What if Papa is at work and the rebels come here?" he said to Angeline. "What will we do?" "They won't come here. There's no reason for them to come here," Angeline tried to reassure him. But Pascal could tell that she was anxious herself. "What are they fighting about, anyway?" "I don't really know. Perhaps they just want change. Perhaps they want a better life, and fighting is the only way they can think of to get it." One morning, a crackling news bulletin on the radio in the village shop told of people being attacked in another village. "Is that village near here?" Pascal asked his mother as she hurriedly paid for her groceries and shunted him outside. Mrs. Camara shook her head and busied herself with Bijou. Oliver saw them from across the road and dashed over to them, greeting his aunt politely. To Pascal, he said, "Did you hear the explosions last night? They sounded really close." "Sound travels," Mrs. Camara broke in. "You'll find they were many kilometers away." "Papa doesn't think so," replied Oliver. "He sleeps by the door at night with an axe and a knife." "Your father has always been overcautious." Oliver looked somewhat taken aback by this criticism of his father by his aunt. Mrs. Camara sensed his unease and patted him on the arm. "It never does any harm, though," she said. Together they walked back to their homesteads, and no further mention was made of explosions or fighting. As they approached, Pascal was delighted to see his father. He was carrying a large piece of wood across their yard, but put it down as soon as he saw them. Pascal ran to him, cheering loudly. "Hey, Papa," he called. "I thought you weren't coming home until the end of the month." "Well, I decided to come home early and spend some time with my family," he smiled, squeezing Pascal's shoulder. He gave his wife a hug, then lifted Bijou high above his head. She wriggled and squealed with pleasure. They went indoors, where Angeline was preparing their meal. The conversation over dinner that evening revolved mostly around Mr. Camara's work at the diamond mines. Mrs. Camara regularly steered the talk back to this topic if it looked like it was heading towards more somber subjects. There were things Pascal wanted to ask his father, but he soon realized that his mother wouldn't allow their time together to be spoiled, and in any case he was just happy to have his father there. Pascal didn't want to follow in his footsteps, but he loved hearing about how he passed his days and the people he worked with. As a manager, his father didn't have to pan for diamonds himself, but that didn't stop Pascal wanting to know everything about the process of searching for the diamonds, and what happened when a worker found one. "What's the biggest diamond anyone ever found?" he asked. "Can the person who found the diamond keep it? How much do you get paid if you find a diamond?" Pascal especially liked listening to stories about what the miners did when they were off duty. Mr. Kamara and his fellow managers seemed to spend many hours playing card games or watching sports on television in a bar in the nearby town, or kicking a ball around with the local townspeople. I wish we had a television, Pascal said when he heard that they watched the national team playing football against rival Malawi. We only drew, said Mr. Kamara. We threw away a 1-goal lead, so you didn't miss anything. Pascal asked him, not for the first time, if he would teach him some card games. Not for the first time, his father promised that he would, one day soon. Pascal wished he meant it, but he always seemed to have more important things to do when he came home. Sometimes Pascal felt that he would never be important in his father's life, and that he disappointed him because he was too quiet. Before he went to bed that night, he asked his father how long he was staying. Just as long as it takes, Mr. Kamara replied. As long as what takes? I have a few things to do, and then I must go back, unless you're planning to provide for us instead of me. Nevertheless, Pascal went to bed that night happy in the knowledge that both his parents were there to protect him if anything bad happened, and he made up his mind that he would ask his father what he thought about the rebels and the fighting, whether or not his mother wanted it discussed. He lay listening to the sounds of the night, cicadas, tree frogs, monkeys, cattle, the low voices of his parents talking, and wondered if he would hear gunfire that night. Would it wake his father, and, if so, what would his father do?